Welcome to Lair the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, another in my series of Why This Band Rules. And the band that I've picked for today are Canadian hard rock, progressive rock legends, Rush. Rush is a band who's been around for a long time, who's had a well-respected and successful career. And there are many reasons why they rule. So let's get into some of them. All right, first of all, you don't have a career as long and as respected as Rush if you don't have great songs. And Rush has a lot of great songs. I could fill this whole board with their songs. But as I was making this video, it occurred to me, wow, they have a lot of songs that get played a lot on classic rock radio here in the States. For instance, some of their biggest ones, Tom Sawyer, Limelight, even YYZ gets played on classic rock radio here. Working Man from their first album, Closer to the Heart, Spirit of the Radio, Free Will, Subdivisions, and even during the MTV era, they got a lot of their videos got a lot of play, like Time Stands Still and Big Money from Power Windows. So they have a lot of songs that get played on the radio. A song like Tom Sawyer gets played at sporting events all the time. So their music has sort of entered into that upper echelon of popularity where people have heard Rush songs whether they realize it or not. So they just have a lot of great songs that have entered into the consciousness of hard rock and music lovers all over the world. All right, next. The musicians. Rush is a band legendary for their great musicianship. Alex Lifeson, Geddy Lee, and Neil Peart, rest in peace. I also put up here, I'm aware that John Rutsey played drums on the first record, but I don't think anyone would argue that the classic lineup of the band is Alex, Geddy, and Neil. All of them fantastic musicians on their instruments. Neil Peart, one of the greatest hard rock drummers of all time, one of the most influential drummers of all time, with his technique and what he did with the drums and expanding the sounds, and when he got into the electronic stuff, and he's just an amazing musician. Geddy Lee, always at the top of people's lists with greatest bass players of all time. A fantastic bass player and a very unique voice. Alex Lifeson, who maybe doesn't get the accolades that Geddy and Neil get, but he's still a great guitar player with a unique style and sound that fits perfectly into Rush. All right, next I would put the lyrics. As we know, Neil Peart, a lot of people know, or maybe you don't, that Neil Peart was the primary lyricist of the band from the time he joined on their second album through all their records. And Neil Peart's lyrics are fantastic. They cover everything from sci-fi and fantasy themes to just more personal and introspective lyrics. Neil was known for being an avid reader, and it shows through in his craftsmanship with his lyrics. They are just fantastic, so well put together. One of my favorite Rush songs, one of my favorite song lyrics of all time is The Trees. It is just beautifully written. It is poetry. It is a novel in of itself. And that was the way a lot of Rush lyrics were. They could take you to other worlds, or Neil could write about himself personally, a song like Limelight and his struggle with fame and the attention that it brought to him. And even though his lyrics were so intelligent, they were never too highbrow where the average person couldn't still get something from them. They were never too wordy, you know. They were just done perfectly. They made you think, they drew you in. Just absolutely fantastic, in my opinion. Some of the best lyrics in hard rock were Rush and Neil Peart's lyrics. Their individuality and uniqueness. I think I spelled that right. I'm not sure. They're a band that, on their first album, they sounded very bluesy, Led Zeppelin-ish, but really from their second album on, they found their sound, and it was a very unique sound. And a lot of that was the combination of the musicianship, Geddy's voice, their style of playing, each one of their styles of playing. Neil's very unique, great lyrics. And it all contributed to this really individual, unique sound that they had really from the beginning. And even as they evolved, they still kept that uniqueness. There was never really a point in Rush's career where they sounded like they were trying to copy a trend or copy some other popular band at the time. No, Rush had their own sound, their own unique sound that they kept through their entire career. They evolved. Even though they had this unique, identifiable sound, they always evolved. They evolved as a band. They evolved as musicians. Their lyrics evolved. Their concepts evolved. They were always pushing themselves for new things, to explore new things, to get better with their playing, with the production on their albums, with everything. They were always evolving. You can follow through their career and see and follow how the directions they went off in. And you may not like some particular eras of the band, maybe the keyboard heavy eras, but you got to respect them for always evolving, always changing, always trying to get better. All right, consistency. Even though they were evolving, they were always consistent. They always put out quality product. Good quality albums, high standard. They always had a very high standard. Quality albums, quality artwork, quality live shows. Even though they kept evolving and kept trying to become better. Again, you could argue about what eras and what albums you like more than others, but they were always consistent. There's no albums in Rush's catalog that sound like they're just throwaway records, contract obligations, or albums that they didn't care about, that they just threw out there. No, there's a high level of consistency through everything that Rush does. All right, and this sort of ties in with a lot of these things. The production. And yeah, some of the early records weren't quite as polished as where they eventually went to. But there's no albums in Rush's catalog, in my opinion, that sound terrible or that have, bizarre, dated production. No, they always sounded good, and as they evolved, they were always consistent, and as they evolved, their productions evolved, the sound of their records evolved with them. And a lot of that in the early days had to do with Terry Brown, who was involved in the production of all their early records from Fly By Night up to and including Signals. All right, next, I would say, is their live shows. Rush is a great live band, and they've always been a great live band right from the beginning. It ties in with all these other things. The production of their live shows is always of a high standard. They're always consistent. They're always evolving as a live band, getting better, adding new elements to their shows. You know when you see Rush live that it's going to be a great show. I've listened to a lot of Rush bootlegs. I've never heard anything where they sound terrible. They always sound really good. Along with the live shows, I think Rush is well known and famous for their live albums. They were a band that every 3 or 4 records, they always put out a live album. And that live album always sort of bookmarked, was the end of a chapter in their career and their sound. In ways, it was kind of like a memory book, a yearbook of where they were at that point in their career. And there were milestones. And then after that, they would evolve into a new sound or move into a new direction. And those live albums always represented where they were at that point in time. And each live album always had, they would have the hit songs. They would include them in there, but they always represented where they were at that time. It wasn't just like live albums with the same songs on them over and over, just from a different later date. The live albums, they always had the songs that represented the era that they were in at that time. They always sounded great, these live albums. And it's something that I think Rush is really remembered for and respected for. All right, I'm going to say their dedication to the fans. You get the feeling that Rush is a band that really respects their fan base. And they respect them putting out these high quality live shows, the live albums, the consistency in their performance and their productions and the way they evolved. And their fans in a lot of ways have evolved with them. And Rush has some of the most dedicated fans in the world because of that. Because Rush is so dedicated to their fans are very dedicated to them. Rush fans buy all the records. You talk to a Rush fan, they know every song. They dive deep into the music. They follow them around on the tours, and they've been dedicated to them since whenever they discovered the band. And going back to their live shows, they're a band that you could say that they hit their commercial peak, at least here in the States, in 1980. With moving pictures and even leading into moving pictures in the late 70s. And once they became an arena band, they stayed there. Even through the 90s, when grunge hit and all that stuff, and a lot of bands from their era were struggling, Rush stayed a stadium band. They never had to drop down and start playing clubs or cancel a bunch of shows. They became a stadium band and they stayed there. And a lot of that is thanks to the dedication of their fans. And the fans respected that they stayed consistent. They didn't sell out. They didn't try to do different, become grunge or industrial or anything like that. They stayed true to their sound. The fans stuck with them. And a last point about why I think Rush rules. And I think this is a big point, actually. They seem like genuinely nice guys and no drama. You got the impression that they genuinely liked each other when Rush was active. They weren't a band where you heard about infighting, or they weren't a drama band where there was drugs and alcohol and arrests and all kinds of craziness and legal battles and stuff like that. No. When they were together, they seemed like a band. I'm sure they still to this day respect each other. They always seemed to respect each other. They always seemed to like each other. They always came across as genuinely nice guys. They never pulled any. They had that respect for their fans, and they had that respect for themselves. They didn't pull any, and this is where I really respect Rush, is that at the end there, they knew it was time to retire. They didn't pull any thing like, okay, reunion, another reunion. Here's our third reunion tour or whatever. They never did that. They, out of respect for themselves, for the fans, they knew it was time, and they left on a high note. Sadly, with the passing of Neil Peart, there's no chance of, in my opinion, someone recently asked me, do I think that Rush would go on with another drummer, get back together? And I said no, because again, it's because of this, the respect they have for their fans, the relationship that they had amongst themselves, the respect they had for each other. They're just not that kind of band. And when they went out, in my opinion, they went out on top. They went out with respect and dignity. And even if Neil was still here with us, I don't think there would have been any last minute reunions or anything. And sadly, because Neil's not here, there will never be a chance of even like a one-off show or anything, because in my opinion, they realized that what they had was a very unique individual thing with these three members. So, all right, there you go. All the reasons why I think Rush rules. That they're a great band. Maybe I missed some points. Let me know in the comments why you think Rush is a great band, why you think that they rule. I think, as you can see, when you add all these things up together, it explains why they are such a great band, why they rule, why they've had such a great, long and successful career. All right, so there you go. Why Rush rules. Let me know in the comments what you think, some of your thoughts. Make sure you hit subscribe and like. And until we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.